Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Today we are going to be talking about the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. This is a very cool class. I love the Sorcerer. It's a very awesomely strange kind of a character. So I'm very excited about this. So if you like what we do here, please like, share, subscribe, and here we go, jumping into the Aberrant Mind. So, here we go, talking about the Sorcerer. I love the Sorcerer. I think it's an incredible class. It's one of my favorite to play. If I'm ever going to play a caster that's not going to be a warlock, my go-to is the Sorcerer. I think they're awesome. I like that there's a lot of risk and reward. I like that they're just not an easy class to play. So when dealing with the Sorcerer, the first and foremost important thing you need to do is you need to assess what subclass you want. This one we're covering the Aberrant Mind. It gives you a lot of cool options on how your character develop these psionic abilities. Definitely look into them, make them important in character creation because it helps build a nice foundation, and it gives your DM something to work with if they're going to be incorporating backstory and who your character is further along in the game. Now, understanding the major concept of the Sorcerer is important to understanding how to play the class best. It's complicated. A lot of people are very easily turned off. They see a lot of issues with it. Some people do. I really don't understand that. But I took a lot of time before I played the Sorcerer to really understand what it did. You have to understand meta magic. You have to know it forwards and backwards, and you have to understand that the same meta magics aren't really that great for all of the subclasses. Some of the things you will get from your meta magic might already be included in your sorcerer origin that you've already selected. Some of them might not be beneficial, and you want to change them up to give your character a little bit of a difference of feel when you play that sorcerer, so they don't all feel the same. And that should be really reflective on who you pick as your subclass, as your meta magics, and growing forward, because you want to change, and it's not very often that you get to change these abilities. Secondly, it's not enough just to know to pick the right meta magics. It's important to understand how your sorcerer points work. Now, early on, you're going to want to use them sparingly because you don't have that many. Later on, as you get higher in levels and your cantrips start doing more damage than your first level spells, you're going to want to start consuming your first level spell slots for the benefits of warping your spells with meta magic. That is something that people need to understand, so you can consume them and regurgitate them, reform them however you would like into sorcery points at certain points to help benefit your class. It's a great way to do it. A lot of the times you'll be using your higher level spell slots anyway, and very few times will you be really maintaining those first or second level spells outside of things like maybe shield or mage armor if that's what you needed. So, understand your meta magics, understand that using your sorcery points is important, understanding that you need to sometimes consume your spell slots for sorcery points, and that it's a good thing most of the time to do so. So don't be afraid to do that. Make sure to incorporate that when you're playing the game. And also make sure to understand that you can use these sorcery points out of combat. And that's one of the things we'll discuss with the Aberrant Mind, and I'll get to that point once we get a little further down in the abilities you gain. At first level, you get access to two abilities. The first one we're going to discuss is Telepathic Speech. You can target a creature within 30 feet of you, and you can speak telepathically with that creature as long as the two of you use the same language. Now, you can converse with them for a number of minutes equal to your sorcerer level, and you can converse with them as long as they do not exceed a distance of miles equal to your charisma modifier. It's a little weird, the wording. A lot of times I get tripped up by it because you have to initially see them within 30 feet, and then if they jump 25 miles away, you can still talk with them telepathically, but they have to do so within a certain amount of minutes, which is just strange. I get maybe somebody teleports something or moves a certain distance very quickly. Okay, it's a little bit more of a flavor thing than it is more of an actual useful mechanic. I think a lot of times if you have something like maybe the actor feat, or you happen to be very good at deception and perceiving yourself as someone else, maybe you can use this to converse with somebody else that you're talking to, maybe as a role-playing point, or really try to get somebody to do something that's unnecessary, or maybe try and implant a memory or a thought of something that maybe a soldier herd, having their commander tell them to go into another direction or patrol or something, in order to trip them up, maybe sneak by somebody. But that's really the only applicable points I can see, unless there is a real scenario in which you have to converse with someone secretly. That being said, it's cool, it's flavorful, I would use it to mess with people, but it's a lot of fun. It fits into that aberrant mind, that strange alien presence, and the ability to just walk into the mind of another. And that's really one of the benefits of being aberrant mind, or an alien kind of presence, because it shows like this strange otherworldly dominance of the life normal people would understand. So the second ability you get, well, really it could be the first depending on how you want to read it, is psionic spells. You gain spells known. At certain levels, they are automatically added to your known spells. They don't count against your known spells, and you can switch them out as you level them up, but you must switch them out to be a divination or enchantment spell. Personally, I like the spells that they suggest that are put here. I love them. I think they're great. Just one of my favorite things in the world is Dissonant Whispers. I love the way it works. It's my favorite low-level spell. It's cool. It's creepy. It's frightening. It causes the fear, almost like a fear condition, but it causes them the fear, and it causes a cool action to happen after it. Look through the spells, see what you like. Again, a lot of the stuff that's on this list is really going to feel flavorful for your character, so you definitely want to incorporate some of them. There's not many I would switch out, but then again, I'm not really an optimizer, so there's a lot of spells here that I would just like just to keep having, and they become important with your other abilities that come later on. At level 6, you gain access to Psionic Sorcery. This is a very cool ability. I really like it. So at 6th level, when you cast a spell of 1st level or higher from your Psionic Spells feature, you can cast it by expending spell slots normally, or by spending a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level. If you cast the spell using sorcery points, it requires no verbal or somatic components, and if it requires a material components, it only does so if the material component is consumed. So breaking that down really simply, unless you have something that has like a diamond that has to be consumed when casting like Revivify or something like that, it does not require material components. It does not require somatic or verbal components. So it's like the subtle spell, which is great because a lot of these are combat spells, which is awesome and just fun to deal with. But the best part about using spells like this, yes, you get to keep onto your spell slots because you're not using as much, because you get these spells basically for the cost of your sorcery points. But they cannot be counterspelled, which is important, because in order to counterspell, you need to be able to see a spell being cast. This is just boom, like there's nothing to see, it just occurs. It's just a very, very quick motion that doesn't even exist. Like it's really just casting a spell with a thought. So if you have to choose a point or anything like that, you don't have to, because there's no somatic components, there's no materialistic like motions or anything that has to happen. It just occurs. That is important because you're now free from counterspell. You don't have to worry about that whatsoever. It's a lot like subtle spell, which is something that you really need to consider when selecting your meta magics, because you might be doubling down. Again, this only works for the psionic spells that you learn through leveling up in this class that have that table for it. That given, if you don't intend to cast other spells, all the spells that are on the psionic spell list with subtle spell, you don't really need it. If you're looking to cast other spells with subtle spell, then you would still need that meta magic, but you don't want to abuse or double down on something you might not need. So thinking your character forward and planning out some of the things they want to do is very important. I get it. Everyone loves subtle spell suggestion. Everyone loves subtle spell charm person. It's a very cool way to get through scenarios that don't have to be combats and get through story wise and using role playing in order to avoid a conflict, which I think should always be rewarded. So it gives you this great big brain moment where you can now weigh the weight of what you're doing, because you can cast that. It is a big cost when you're at 6th level. Casting a 3rd level spell, or it's half your sorcery points. You might need to consume a few more in order to balance that out. But depending on how you play your character and what kind of scenarios you're looking to use your meta magics in, this can be a benefit, or it can be something that you don't really want to use as much. Or say you're low on spell slots but high on sorcery points. Burn a couple of those, save your spell slots, and you can always consume those if you do need more sorcery points further down the line. Also, at 6th level, you do gain psychic defense. This gives you resistance to psychic damage and advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. Very beneficial. You always want extra resistance whenever you can get them. Psychic doesn't come up often, but fear and the frightened condition and the charm condition do come up rather regularly. It's not as beneficial to cast them starting to get this level beyond on enemies, but a lot of enemies tend to cast these spells on you or have effects similar like that they will be using more frequently. So it's a great thing to have. So level 6, you get a couple of cool things. Nothing really like an action that you would really take outside of the norm, but it definitely gives you a nice little change to how you get to play your character, and a little bit of options on how you get to do some things. At 14th level, you gain Revelation in Flesh. This is a very cool ability. It gives you a lot of really mechanical options that you can do, which is a very interesting concept depending on what kind of scenarios you find yourself in. So you can unleash the aberrant truth hidden behind yourself. As a bonus action, you can spend 1 or more sorcery points to magically transform your body for 10 minutes. For each sorcery point you spend, you gain one of the following benefits. Each of these effects will last until the transformation ends. So if you spend multiple sorcery points, you can have these occurring simultaneously. It's a little interesting to use that simultaneously. A lot of these is very situational, and some of them can be great, some of them are not. Some of them depends on how you play or what kind of where you are and how your dungeon master runs these encounters or exploration or dungeons, because that'll affect what's going on. One of the first options is you can see invisible creatures within 60 feet of you, provided it isn't behind total cover. Your eyes also turn black or become writhing sensory tendrils. It's cool because if you really see that, if you're in a group and you just look over and your friend has this strange tentacles shooting out of their eyes, it's frightening, it's fun, I love it. This extra sensory perception that you gain is very beneficial if you're in a scenario where that might be really important to you. Say you're in fear of something, or you know something went invisible. It's a bonus action. If you're fighting something that uses invisibility, or if you know you're in an area where maybe things are hiding, this is a godsend, because this will last 10 minutes, so you can get really quickly out of an area, especially if this is more of a role-playing circumstance than it is an actual combat, like you're trying to escape from these hidden ghosts or something like that. This will be a benefit. This will be like a group savior. This will be something that definitely gives you the opportunity to fight back and at least save your party members, depending on what scenarios come up. Secondly, you can gain a flying speed equal to your walking speed and can hover. As you fly, your skin glistens with a mucus or shines with an otherworldly light. One of the things that I keep seeing come up is this, that you can hover. And a lot of people don't really understand what that means. So really quickly, I want to break that down. If someone knocks you prone while you are flying, you plummet to the ground. However, if you can hover, you do not fall to the ground. You just kind of topple over and are laying almost straight across. So you can't suffer plummeting to what can inevitably be your doom. You just kind of topple over and you're not standing really. That's an important thing to understand, because some flying spells don't give you that. Some flying abilities do not give you that. Very few of them do, but being able to hover maintains your ability to be outside of the dangers of whatever it is you're supposed to be on. Like if you're trying to jump a chasm or whatever, you decide, yeah, I'm gonna fly, and somebody hits you with something that knocks you prone, you're not gonna plummet into the cavern. You're just gonna float there and just be knocked over. It's important to understand that difference. It took me a while to figure that out, actually. I'm ashamed to say, but a lot of people don't really talk about that, so I want to make sure people understand and know that. The benefits of flight depends on who you are. Since you're a sorcerer, you don't have high AC or high HP. This isn't really your gambit. Staying out of melee range, flight will give you that. It'll give you that ability to not be up close, and it'll be harder for people to really need to attack you first, or be tactical or smart enough or have the high intelligence necessary to pick you apart from a distance. Plus, if they have to go through everyone on the ground in order to get to you, it's a big benefit to you. So it's a great escape. It's a great way to stay out of dangerous scenarios, but understand that it does make it so that way everything can see you, because you're above and not behind like a Goliath or a Minotaur or a half-orc or something like that. Third option you get is you gain a swimming speed equal to twice your walking speed, and you can breathe underwater. Moreover, gills grow from your neck or fan out from behind your ears. Your fingers become webbed, and you can grow writhing cilia that extends through your clothing. I really wish there is more water and underwater scenarios, or more shipping adventures, and that DMs really incorporate that into their games, because it's a scary moment for most people. Like, if you're on a ship and it just gets destroyed and you're now sitting out in the ocean, A, it's a great role-playing moment because nobody's prepared for that. B, everyone is scared. C, these abilities are a real dynamic changer. Say there's an underwater cavern, you want to get there, you need to get there. Being able to breathe underwater will be a great benefit. Making sure, say you have NPCs that have to come with you, it's a great way to save a spell slot, and making sure you can get those NPCs out and underwater and into the safe area until you can find a way out. These things are interesting. It's a cool dynamic. You could always, as a DM, you could always just put a scenario where you have to go underwater to go through a cavern or a dungeon or something. It's a cool usage. It's a little change from the normal things that we always deal with, and it's nice to feel challenged and to feel something new incorporated. I know this is not really the video for that, but keep that important and maybe try it, or at least maybe find someone that runs something like that and give it a chance. Fourth, you get the ability for, this is a little bit interesting. So you become pliable. Your whole body and everything you're carrying becomes slimy and pliable, and you can pass through a space as narrow as an inch without squeezing, and you can spend 5 feet of movement to escape from non-magical restraints or being grappled. Wild. Interesting. If you're trapped behind something, if you're locked up for whatever reason in a prison, this will get you out. This is more of an escape if you really need to get out of a scenario, or you're trapped in a room and you just manage to blow open a hole that's just like this big. You can get out of there and maybe try and escape and find another way out. It's more of an adventuring skill than it is an actual useful mechanic in my mind. But hey, getting slimy is cool. I love it. I'm with it. I do it just to do it. I'd sneak into my friends' rooms at the inn. Like, it's just weird and unnecessary, but you gotta have fun sometimes. So we're gonna move on to the final ability. At 18th level, the capstone ability for the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer is Warping Implosion. This is a very tactical, useful ability. It requires a little thought and planning in order to pull off successfully, but it is one of those cool things that you will never see anyone else ever pull off. So you can unleash your aberrant power as a space warping anomaly. As an action, you can teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within 120 feet of you. That alone is very useful. It is basically a free teleport. So immediately after you disappear, each creature within 30 feet of the space you left must make a strength saving throw. On a failed save, a creature takes 3d10 force damage and is pulled straight towards the space you left, ending in an unoccupied space as close as possible to the space that you had left. On a successful save, a creature takes half as much damage and isn't pulled. You can use this once per long rest unless you spend 5 sorcery points to use it again. It can be very tactical in the right hands. It's level 18, so you gotta understand things are very, very crazy because you're changing reality basically with the spells that you have access to. But using this in a smart way can save your party. It can set up a very, very cool moment. Remember, it's not a spell, it's an ability. So you can misty step into a group of enemies outside of your party being within 30 feet and then cast this and jump back behind your party and be protected again. Because again, it's not a spell, it is just an ability. So you do that and you fly back and you're safe, and everyone else is now clustered, or as many people possibly are clustered. So that can be very, very beneficial to you because someone else can take advantage of the scenario. If you have any other spellcasters, they can all drop AoE, fireballs, shatters, synaptic statics, all in that area, and really do a lot of damage, change a lot of different things. Or if you have a druid in the party, you can do that, warping implosion, and maybe they can use pillars of earth and surround them. You know, like, it doesn't always have to be fatal, but it can be a very cool moment. Maybe it's not, because 3d10 force damage, yeah, 30 is a pretty decent hit, but you're never going to roll 3 10s out all at the same time, unless you're just the luckiest person in the world. But there's a good chance a lot of people will survive this. So maybe you do it to save some lives as opposed to just damaging or ending others. You can use this to be a hero. You can jump across something and pull people to safety if they choose to fail the saving throw. You know, it is a possibility. You know, using this creatively is what's really going to give you the most benefit. A lot of people will look at it initially and think, oh, it's just one of those things to move the enemies around. And yeah, that does work. But remember, you can move other things as long as it's a creature. But it's also an escape. It's also a great way for you to get out of danger or out of harm's way. Because even if you jump forward 30 feet, that's still 90 feet you can jump away. And it gives you the availability to not harm your teammates and get yourself into safety and maybe slow somebody down. Or again, you can use it creatively to change something else, to change the dynamics of a scenario. Maybe you're standing up, like, it doesn't say that they can't be pulled across something. So understand that. You know, maybe you're on a scenario where, like, a bridge broke and it's 20 feet across. If they fail and you're 10 feet away, maybe you might pull them close enough to make it. You know, like, there's a lot of leeway here, and a creative person can do a lot with that, as long as you don't conceptualize it as purely a damage skill and use it for the whole game. Focusing on things like that is really what's going to make that a very, very beneficial ability. My final thoughts on the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. I love the Sorcerer class as it is right off the bat. I think they're great. I think they're thematic. I think they're fun. I think it's just so cool to be. But the Aberrant Mind really sets you up to be this very strange, very, like, nervous, like it makes people nervous being around you. People are untrusting. There's almost like this dark cryptic aura around you that makes people not trust you, and just this willingness just to invade people's mind because they're not wanting to talk to you, but you need to talk to them, and so you're going to bend the rules in order to do so. It gives you this cool ability. It gives you this cool thought process behind who your character is, because understand, whatever your character was, however they were set up, they were that before they became this. So there's definitely a disconnect to who they are and who they were, and how those things affect their character is just perfect for a role-playing scenario. You can build a very cool character through that, especially if you make it some sort of concept where how your thoughts are now are being affected by your power, so they're not as human or regular to your culture, but more so abstract, as you are now thinking like an aberrant mind as opposed to thinking like a regular being that would exist in this world. I think that's great. I think it's a lot of cool things that you can combine into something very cool, and it gives you a very, very great jump off point. The abilities are cool. I like them. I think they're great. Some of them might not seem so great, but what you might fail to understand is that in these specific spell casting classes like the wizard and the bard and the sorcerer and the druid and the cleric, you have access to magic, and magic is extremely powerful. So you will most of the times you will see abilities that don't really give you a lot of damage. They will give you certain tricks or things to do, or mechanics that might be able to be difficult to get around, or buffs in strange places, because straight out damage is a lot when you can do things like cast Wish, or when you can cast Fireball, or when you can cast those spells that basically destroy everything in sight. Your damage exists, your potency exists through the spells that you select. So when you're playing a spellcasting class, you have to do your homework and read through the spells available to you. Doing that is going to make your spellcaster very viable. It's going to make you very good at whatever it is you want to do, and make you very capable and feel powerful and feel important. That being said, a lot of these subclasses will need you to know the world you're in to get the most out of them. A lot of the times, especially with sorcerers, because you get specific things that either make or break your character in certain ways, you have to build your character based on the subclass that you choose. It's great. I like being able to do that. I find it helps me have a good skeletal framework to what my character is going to do, because if my character is going to do a lot of damage spells, he's going to be an aggressive character. If my character is going to do a lot of mischievous things like charm and like silent images and trickery things like that, he's going to be a trickster-like character. So, persuasion and deception are going to be more important to him than dealing high damage. Looking at your spells and looking at your subclass, especially for the sorcerer, is really what's going to make or break your character and what's going to feel right for them. That being said, love it. I love the sorcerer. A lot of people like this subclass because it's very cool. It gives you a lot of different things, but it's fun because it's different, and it's cool because you get to be strange. Enjoy it, and thanks for giving the spooky kid a chance.